Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. This week, we have such an exciting guest, and I cannot wait to dive deeper into her story and to hear how she has incorporated a deeper connection with her womb space, with her feminine energy, and with all things regarding being a woman into how she transformed her whole life. So today, I am so excited to have Rebecca Canup on our podcast today. She is a Canadian poet. She's been walking her poetry journey since she was 11 years old, picking up a pen and a piece of paper and jotting down anything and everything that came to her mind. In 2020, she left her full-time healthcare job to pursue writing full-time. Since then, she has birthed 3 major things in my mind into this world, which is crazy to think because it's only the beginning of 2023. She has birthed her poetry book, her first poetry book, Women Born in Fire, Burning with Grace and Other Lessons. She's birthed her second book. Like, can we just pause to take that in? Second book, which is a poetry chapter book about pregnancy and motherhood, where the sand meets the ocean. And lastly, her little baby boy was born last August, which is another big birth. She also runs and facilitates a women's writers group in the writers' room and offers a mentorship program to guide other poets and writers as well. I just love the fact that when you're like, I birthed 3 things, that it wasn't just I birthed the physical life, right? And I think so many of us as women, we get caught up in this idea that the womb space is all about birthing a life, birthing a baby. And one thing that I love to guide women into understanding is that our womb space is the home of our authentic self. Not only do we birth a person who's going to be a bit of our personality out into this world, who's going to take on some of our characteristics, but this is where we birth us. This is where all of what we're going to contribute to the world stems from. And I just recently read in a book by Lucy Pierce that she considers our womb space our second heart. And I was like, yes, it is our second heart for women. So welcome, Rebecca. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's so awesome to be here. Actually, this is my very first podcast. So yeah,
this is exciting. I can't wait. We're pretty low-key here. We just like to flow with conversation, provide inspiration, and really just get into the goods of how we can live a really amazing life by breaking the rules. And this is where I really think that your story is going to inspire so many women, because a lot of women that I meet, their journey is very similar to yours, where we break the rules, where we live a very conventional life or a very conventional relationship or a very conventional job. And we do the extreme that makes everyone go, are you okay? Like, what are you thinking? Oh,
yeah. You're singing my song, Kate. I got that a lot.
Yes. Well, here's a funny thing is that so for those that don't know, what really brought me into understanding the womb space was when I went through my own fertility journey. And I was told that I couldn't heal my body. And when I sat with that and I seeked out other healers to help me on that journey, one of my biggest ahas was, this is my environment. Like, part of what's restricting me, and I had fallopian tube issues, right? I kept having ectopic pregnancies. So mine is like, where are you being really rigid in life? Where are you not being flexible? And it came down to the amount of stress I was feeling in my life. And my work was a huge contributor to my stress. I loved the people. And to be honest, the company had amazing policies. Like, it was a really great company to work for, but the work was not my life's purpose. The work every day showing up, I was like, why the hell am I doing this? I don't believe in this.
It kills a little bit of your soul, right? Like, it takes something from you every day. Every day it takes something from you. And that's what I learned in my experience. And like, I think a lot of women are more like in the creative, intuitive realm, where sometimes you don't fit into that corporate world, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the struggle is like, okay, well, okay, I have to do this because it's stable, but like my heart's calling for something else and always has been.
Yeah. And I have to follow the rules and I have to do things
Mm-hmm.
this way because this is how business is ran, which doesn't work with women. I had this conversation, I think in the 2 episodes ago about the fact that the male hormonal system resets every 24 hours, which really works for the 9 to 5 job. A woman's cycle is 28 plus or minus days.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's wild.
We need a different schedule. We cannot optimize at our fullest potential and efficiency by operating on a 24-hour clock.
I agree.
Yeah. And so it was really interesting that when I was like, I don't know why, but this is not what I'm supposed to be doing for work, I decided to jump. And I remember my husband going, what are we going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I just trust that the universe is going to hold me and we'll figure it out. Like I've got skills, I've got education, something will work itself out. I don't know how. And so I went into work and handed my resignation. And within an hour, HR had called me in to ask me if I had cancer or if I had a terminal illness. Because they were like, because the company that I worked for, I was also a share owner because it was a company owned company. And so they're like, you have shares, you have skin in the game. Nobody leaves this. Like that was really their mentality. Nobody leaves this kind of money or ownership of something. So that way they could do nothing unless they're retiring. And I was like, unless they're sick. And I was like, no, I'm not sick. I don't have cancer. I'm not dying. I just know in my gut that I need to do this to be healthier. And I have to find my life's purpose. And it's so crazy that my fertility journey led me to the path of where I am now, which who thought I'd be talking about women's wombs and menstrual cycles?
It is a very like niche topic. Like I'm just going to backtrack because how you and I met was I actually saw through a mutual friend that you were doing the workshop with, Melanie Bendiaf. She's amazing. She does a lot of SRT work. I saw through her like how to heal your womb and do a womb healing. And I'm like, what is this? Because I had just gone through a miscarriage and it was very awful for me. It kind of spiraled me into depression. And I didn't know if I wanted to go again, if I wanted to try again, if maybe motherhood wasn't for me because this happened to me. And so, when I saw this, I just gravitated towards it. I was like, what is this? What is this workshop? This looks very empowering. This looks very healing. Like, I couldn't say no to it. So I just jumped in. And like I was telling people, I'm like, I'm going to this, womb healing. And they're like, what? Like, what's a womb healing ceremony? Like, what is this? But when I met you and, it was interesting because you taught about the cycles. It wasn't just come here and I'll place my hand on you and I'll heal you. It was like, this is what you need to know. This is the education behind it. And so that really changed things for me in the way of like, wait a second. So like we go through cycles with our period. We go through cycles within our month. We go through cycles within our moods and, things that we need to be eating and energy. The energy one was a big one for me. So you talked about the seasons of like your period and the seasons of, how it works. And I'm like, wow, that's why in certain times I feel lower, or I feel like I need to go inward, or I feel like I need to be more creative and spring forward. And, without that education, I think it really helped me in more ways than just healing my fertility issue. It was in like, okay, like this is a huge step in my entire life, and starting that journey has helped me along, even just to be able to be more mindful of my world. Be like, okay, I'm on my first day of my period. Like, how am I feeling? Maybe this is a day for rest. Maybe this isn't a day to make plans or to go out and do like a million things, and just take note of how I'm feeling in my body. It's really important work.
Yeah.
So,
and you said something there that it not only healed your fertility, and this is not actually studied this is not a stat that I have found out there, but I truly, in my womb space, know that our fertility issues that we face, our menstrual health conditions, like if we have endometriosis, fibroids, these are all the ways for our body to say you are locked in your womb and you are not living your rhythm. Like you're not living your best life. And if you're not going to live your best life, I'm going to give you something to make you pause and shift. Because it amazes me that every woman, once they learn about their cycle on the fertility journey, they get pregnant. Like I always say it's not my programs that have some kind of special tool that you're going to walk away with going, I've gained this tool that nobody else has ever taught me. It's that for the first time, people are seeking to connect with their body. And when we connect with our body, we're more empowered. And when we're more empowered, we make better decisions for ourselves. But that all comes from us connecting to our energy and breaking the norm of what we've been told we're supposed to do.
100%. Yeah. I mean, and I think being like, I am a creative person and I've always been a creative person. You know how in my bio it said I've been writing since I was 11. Well, I knew at a really young age that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write. I had journals and journals when I was a kid. I would scribble song lyrics and poems and just how I was feeling down on a piece of paper, you know, but I was told you can't make money at this. I was told it was a pipe dream. I was told, no, what are you going to do as a writer? You're also going to have to work at a restaurant. You're also, what's your plan B? Do you know how many times I heard, what's your plan B? Like thousands. I can't even tell you. Thousands. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, when that's drilled into you at a young age, that being a creative equals no money, it equals you have no career prospects, it equals like basically no future for yourself. That's really what drove me into healthcare. Don't get me wrong. I care about people. And I think being in healthcare is important. I think it's a very important sector. And I think it takes a special kind of person because we need it. We need other people who are willing to take care of others, doctors, nurses, you know, support staff. Like they are what makes the world go round. And I thank those people and truly like admire them. But I wasn't one of them. Like I wasn't, it never fit. It never fit me. I never felt like I fit in. You know, I always kind of felt like a little bit of an oddball, even in my belief systems and things I valued, you know, like Western medicine doesn't really go with alternative ways a lot. Like that's becoming better now at mixing. But when I first started working in healthcare when I was 19, it was a different story back then. Like you just, you know, the things I was talking about, people were like, okay, like this girl's crazy. And I wasn't encouraged, even by family members and friends. I was not encouraged to walk a different path. I was not encouraged, you know, to see what was out there. You know, it was like, okay, you're graduating high school. Are you going into healthcare or are you going into oil and gas? Because here in Alberta, art is not nurtured. At my age, it wasn't something that was like, oh, you're doing poetry. Wonderful. Like, let's see where this goes. It was like, oh, poetry, you know, it doesn't seem like a stable job. And so, you know, I pushed that away, Kate, for a very long time. You know, I shoved that down. I was still writing, but it was almost like I was ashamed of it because, you know, I didn't have an outlet to share it. I didn't have people to say, yeah, great. Like, let's hear it. I'm excited for you. It was like, I even had friends once told me that it was embarrassing. Like, this is embarrassing. And when you hear that from peers, and I think you and I talked about this before, but I'm also a recovering codependent. So when you're a recovering codependent, you care about what everybody thinks of you, and you care about, you know, how the world looks at you. And so it's like, I had no support. And so that was something that I really just shoved it down. And I think I had a lot of repressed feelings towards art. I had a lot of repressed feelings towards like being a woman and being told like, you can't do this. You know, it very much, the corporate world is very much a man's world, even still to this day. Women are fighting for it, but it's still a man's world. And so, you know, I think a little bit of my femininity got lost in that shuffle. Like I really had to find myself again.
Here's a really crazy story that kind of links to what you were just sharing about that shame that you almost felt for like, this is what wants to be expressed to me. Like this, if you want to know me, this is who I am. And then feeling like we have to repress it. My dad passed away at the end of November, and at his funeral, and he worked at a dealership, like a car dealership, for 20 years of his life. And at his funeral, one of his old colleagues came up to me to say, like, I'm sorry for your loss. And he was like, so what are you doing now? And I've been doing this work for 10 years. For 10 years, I have left my corporate job and I've been teaching women about fertility and their bodies and the cycle. You know what my response was to him? Because he was a man that worked in a very male-dominated environment that only knew me as my dad's daughter. I said, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Where the F did that come from? Like, why did I in that moment feel like, and it was without even thinking it just came out. It was like a visceral response in my body of going, I can't be me. It's not safe for me to say, I teach women about their menstrual cycles and how to live authentically with their divine feminine energy. Like I could not say that in that environment in a small town where this funeral was to honor my dad. I felt like I had to say that it was more valuable if I said I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I remember as soon as it came out of my body, I just went into this freeze state. And later on, we went home and I looked at my husband. I said, why did I do that? That felt so gross. Like, I feel like I'm going to throw up that I even said that. And he was like, I have no idea why you said that. So then literally that night, I sat down with pen and paper and I workshopped it. The next time I'm in an unsafe environment, well, and it wasn't unsafe, but my body felt unsafe. It felt unsafe in the patriarchal, masculine energy. So the next time I'm in a situation where I feel like I can't authentically be me, how do I respond? And I workshopped the crap out of that experience. So I marked it as like, this wasn't a bad experience that I did this. It was my body and maybe the universe challenged me a bit of going, are you really okay with who you are? And can you really speak your truth? Are you safe to be visible and seen? And after that moment, I was like, I'll never do that again. I will never do that again. And since then, it's funny because it's now 2 months past my dad's funeral. I have told my hairdresser what I've done. I've told the person who took my registration for my son's preschool about that. I couldn't take in the information because I'm in my menstruation and I'm bleeding right now. My brain's not working. And she was like, okay. Now I just look at every opportunity. I'm like, no, I am auto-correcting that response. And I am going to keep auto-correcting it because that wasn't me authentically being me. It made me feel uncomfortable to be small. So I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah. You know what? Not that there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home mom, because if that's what you do for a living, like, kudos. It is the hardest job, as we both know as mothers. It is the hardest job in the world. So I'm not saying like it's a bad thing to be a stay-at-home mom, but if you have something that you do that you're really proud of, on top of being a parent, that's diminishing yourself to just lie about what you do. Like, yes, you stay at home with your kids, and also you have a really important role in this world. You have a really important gift. So, I've been there, and the first time I got pushback, someone asked me, I can't remember who it was. That was somebody else. Oh, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a writer and a poet. And they look at me and go, oh, does that make money? Like, that's the response, right? Because that's the programming. It's not like, oh, interesting. Like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, tell me more about it. It's, does that make money? And so I have felt how you felt, being like, kind of not wanting to own who I am and not wanting to own what I do, and be like, ooh, maybe I should just tell people that, like, I'm still in healthcare, or maybe I should just tell people I'm undecided, but I'm not. This is who I am. I am a writer and a poet. And so I say it proudly. And if people have that reaction, that is their reprogramming. That is on them. That is not on me. Like, I know in my heart that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. For the first time, I felt aligned in myself and in my body and in my world. I feel very much aligned in everything that I do. And I never felt like that before, almost 20 years in healthcare. And I never felt like I was actually doing what I was supposed to do. In fact, I gained a lot of resentment from sitting in something where I felt I was almost being forced. At one point I would sit on Instagram on my lunch breaks and look at people who are going for their dreams, and I would be angry. I would be like, why did they get to do that? And I'm stuck in this that I don't want to, it doesn't, like I said before, being in healthcare is a wonderful thing. And I applaud you if you do it, but it felt like a jail to me. And, a creative person can't be in a 9-to-5 kind of box. They can't be sitting in an office or a clinic or this and that, because it's stifling. It's like I've said before, it kills your soul. And so I was becoming a very bitter, angry person. And the pandemic actually helped me with this. I have to say, it really helped me sit in my stuff for a bit and say, like, what do you want? Like, what do you actually want? And how are you going to make this a reality? Because not a lot of people have gone and left their 20-year job to take on something that a lot of other people don't do, right? So you'd be kind of starting out from scratch, starting at the bottom. And the number one thing I had to do, Kate, was to get vulnerable. And that was the hardest thing to do was, and I say this to anybody out there who wants to do something different. It doesn't even have to be a creative job. It can be, I'm unhappy in this. I want to try this. Or, I've been at this job for 30 years. And you know what? I would love to try my dream or this. It's all about getting vulnerable and admitting it to yourself first. And then putting that out there into the universe and saying, like, okay, what am I going to do to make this happen? Because like you woke up and you were like, you obviously got down on a piece of paper and you wrote down your resignation or typed it out, and so that was the action behind the first step, was to be like, I'm leaving, right? I'm leaving, and I'm not going to take a pay raise, or if someone begs me to stay, like, I've made up my mind, I'm leaving. And that is the very first step that you need to take. I actually had like a plan. So I was like, I'm going to save some money. I didn't want to be, I am married, so I do have financial support through my husband, but I'm also independent. And I didn't want to say, like, hey, honey, you pay for everything in life. Like, that's not how I was raised. So I saved money. I really created a plan. I put myself out there with my writing before I even left. And people were like, what are you doing? Like, you're writing poetry on Instagram? Like, what is this? Like, okay, that's weird. That's not what everybody else does. Everybody else posts pictures of their cat or their niece or their whatever, right? But I was like, oh, I need to get serious. I need to start somewhere, anywhere. Start writing on napkins or, putting my stuff on Instagram or Facebook. Like, just start. So I just jumped. I was like, you know what? I just have to do it. I'm sure, as you know, once you start the ball rolling, like, you can't stop it. It just snowballs from there. It's like a snowball running down a hill. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you feel more liberated. You feel more in alignment. So the biggest struggle for me was to get past, because I am a codependent, or was a codependent, was to get past what people thought. And that's like mostly family and friends. Strangers, I didn't care what they thought. But family and friends, that was the hardest thing for me, definitely.
And it's interesting because family and friends, I felt okay with. Strangers, I thought I was going to be challenged on. And I was like, how do I tell people what I do? And like, the biggest thing is, like, 2 of my kids are in school. And so when other parents ask me what I do for a living, like, how do I say this is what I do? Which is my own hurdle that I had to get over, of being okay to be seen and vulnerable, and to make other people perhaps a little uncomfortable, because this is so true. And we know this to be true, is that when we make people uncomfortable, when there is uncomfortableness in the environment, that's when change happens. When we look at anything outside of like this conversation, like the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, any movement that happens, it made people uncomfortable for change to happen. And so me making someone uncomfortable by saying, I talk to women about their menstrual cycles, that's okay, because then it's bringing awareness to going, I didn't know that was something that we had to talk about. Why do we need to talk about that? And then this wheel starts spinning. Like my husband and what he knows now of the menstrual cycle, it's so interesting how now this is like just part of our conversation, right? And he would have never been like, can you teach me about the menstrual cycle? It was because it was like, this is what I do, and this is where I'm at, and this is how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling this way. And so it's now created like this method of connecting dots. And even when I was doing the research around the cyclical working women, and I was creating that module for the sisterhood membership, I remember when I was on my research, I went to him and I was like, okay, you're a manager and you have a few female staff, like he's an engineer, so it's mainly masculine or male dominated industry. I'm like, but you have a few females in your little cohort here. Would you be willing to think about their work life in this 28-day scale versus this one? And I explained to him the logic behind it and what actually happens, and energy levels, and how overwhelm, burnout, all these bigger things happen, or sick days. And he was like, this makes sense. He's like, yeah, I would consider it. It makes sense. It's logical sense. And I was like, okay. So this dinner table conversation, we just need to bring it out into the world. And we need to change the way people see, whether it be living your passion, living by your cycle, whatever it might be, of going like, there's room for it all. And I think you're a great token of that, because let's be serious, going from a job that you know is secured income into any entrepreneurship, but particularly female entrepreneurship. I can't remember the stats of how much female entrepreneurs make compared to male. It's drastically different, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But then adding the layer of doing an art on top of that has a whole nother layer of like insecurity. It doesn't mean that it can't happen, but there is this, like you said, this tone of, can you make money at that? And so when you leap with confidence. And so saying that you're vulnerable, you had to be vulnerable.
Well, and the biggest thing as well is like, you have to have a belief within yourself. So whether that be like, you talk a lot about like manifestation. Like, yes, I believe in manifestation. And I also believe that you need to have work for it as well. So there's I don't know who the quote is by, but it's basically a woman is praying and saying, God, please, 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 let me win the lottery. And then God replies to her and says, well, please, please, please go buy a ticket. So like, it basically means like, yes, you can have this life, but it's not just granted to you, like manifestation is only like a small percentage of it. You also have to go out and make yourself be seen and put yourself out there and do the hard work. And sometimes that means getting smacked down. Like I have had people message me, praising me for what I do. And then I've had people messaging me being like, why is this important? And I've learned it's not on me, that they can't see the value in it. If you have questions and you want me to, talk about that, absolutely. I will talk about why art is important forever and ever and ever. But it's not my job to make you see why people would want to invest in it, or why people would want to learn from it, or why people would, want to even just be a part of it. Like you said, like movements make people uncomfortable. And so like nothing grows in the comfort zone, and that, including yourself. So, taking like what other people say and turning it into like fuel for your fire is also really important. And being like, I'm not going to let that one person like naysay me so that then I'm crawling back into healthcare, because to live a jailed life again, like once you're out of the box, you're out of the box. No, there's no stepping you back in really. Unless you miss it and you're like, oh, I'd love to go back. That's one thing. But just to go back because of what somebody else's opinion of what you do is, especially men. I think men have a hard time with why art is important. And I think it's so wonderful. Like, look how you educated your husband, even someone who I'm sure is supportive of you and loves you and wants you to do all the best things in the world. he's not educated in the way that you are. And so here you are bringing this beautiful knowledge and your magic to him and saying like, here's how you can help other people. That's what doing something that you love and you're passionate about. That's what it's really about. It's like helping others and saying like, yeah, like come on this journey with me, come walk with me, learn from me. I want to learn from you. Like, let's all, so I think like being a part of the art world can sometimes be challenging, that art is subjective. And so something that maybe I post or I write, someone doesn't connect with, and that's okay. I tell my mentorship clients, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, meaning like, not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to like what you put out there. Not everyone's going to vibe with you. And sometimes it'll make you feel uncomfortable to get that sort of feedback. But that's okay. It's like, okay, well, I'm sitting in this, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm going to work through it, and I'm going to keep going because I know that I'm on my right path.
It's really interesting. I don't remember where I heard this, but the felt sense of fear, how it lands in the body, it doesn't land differently, whether that is fear because I'm going to do something enthralling, exciting, like thrilling, or if it's fear of, oh God, this is going to be bad, right? Mm-hmm. So the fear of good and bad is felt exactly the same in the body. So if you're going to feel fear, you might as well feel fear because you're making the right move in life.
Absolutely. The first time I posted, not a poem, but like about what I was doing, like, I was announcing basically that I'm leaving my job and I'm doing this full time. I bawled my head off because it was like a release, right? Like it was all these things and then B, it was like, okay, this is now reality. This is now like happening and I'm saying it's happening. But like it was a mix of things, it was like anticipation and excitement and fear. But you're right, it all fits in the body. And so why not do something that makes you feel really good instead of stuffing it down and saying like, I can't do this. Well, of course you can. Why can't you? Mm-hmm. That's what I would always say to myself. Like, why can't I? Like, what's stopping me from living this dream? I even went out to Vancouver to pursue this dream when I was in my mid-20s. And I stopped myself from doing it because I was scared. And I was like, what are people going to think of me? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, now that, I'm a little bit older, I'm in my mid-30s. I look back at my younger self, and this is what I wish I could tell people nowadays, is like, who cares what people are going to think? Because this is going to live inside you like forever, whether you do it or not. It's still going to be there. Something that is really passionate, lights you up, feeds your soul. Like you cannot deny it and you can't get rid of it. Believe me, I tried. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. But I always came back to writing. I always came back to poetry. I always came back for the love of it. It just fired me up. And so, whether you try to snuff out your flame or what, it's still going to be there. There's no way to deny it or get rid of it. So I don't know. I say go for it. And part of that is also healing your codependency and what other people think and feel. I was really scared of what my friends and family were going to think. I was like, they're going to think I'm a loser. They're, or whatever my thought process was at the time. And I found like a lot of people were more supportive than I really was thinking they would be. So, and if you have people in your life that are complete naysayers and negative, like maybe it's time to take a look at your tribe or who's in your life, because anybody who really loves you is going to be like, Kate, that's awesome. Like, tell me more about like you. I want to know about like my women's cycles. Like this is like information for me. This is going to empower me as well on my journey. So like, tell me more about, all the stuff. Cause like it's not something people know. And who knows what you're doing and how you're living your life authentically could help somebody else go out and live their life authentically.
And when we evolve, all aspects of our life evolve, which means that the people who were in our life at a certain stage were representative of who we were then. So when we evolve, sometimes those people are not on that evolution path with us, and that's okay. there's newer people coming our way. There are people that are going to help deepen us into who we are growing into being. So I have a question for you to dive deep into it then. What would you see would be the catalyst? Like, what was that moment that made you go, I'm switching gears. I'm going to follow my dreams? If there was a moment.
There definitely was a moment, and I can see it in my head. I can see the moment where I was like, I'm done. You know what? Like I said, the pandemic really pushed that forward. So when I was in my healthcare job, it was the middle of the pandemic, like July 2020. And there was a lot of abuse going on at that time from all angles. So abuse on people who, didn't believe in what was happening, and people who in the healthcare system, we had rules to follow. Like there was no, just because I didn't believe something doesn't mean I don't wear a mask. Like we had to do those things or we'd lose our job. And so I was not in a good place mentally at all. It was a really big struggle for me to go to work every day and face this type of like anger and hate. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it was a long time coming. It wasn't just like, I think the pandemic was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, because I had struggled with that a lot in healthcare, was, attitudes and having to just take a lot of stuff. And as a creative and sensitive and empathetic person, I really struggled with that my entire life. I was like, I can feel this person's pain. I can feel this person's anger. And I really took it in. And so, like I've said, kudos to those who work in that area. But as a creative, I couldn't do it. And I thought, you know what, this is my time where I'm going to go and do what I want to do and spread love and kindness and growth and things that will help heal the world, instead of being a part of something that maybe was, fueling hate or fueling anger, So for me, it was, I need to be the change. I need to be the change. And writing is a really important part of today's society. Like we have now so many more copywriters, content writers, people who are writing, journalists, and news reporters, and just people on Instagram who have gotten noticed for their work. Writing is so important nowadays. And so I was like, what do I want my message to be? I want my message to be like, okay, let's love each other. Let's find a way to connect. Let's find a way back to each other. And I couldn't do that from sitting in a clinic. I couldn't do that from sitting in an office. I felt like it was almost like an explosion, Kate. Like, I'm not sure if that's how you felt when you left your job, but it was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, now is the time. Like, I'm taking the reins. I can't ignore it anymore. So it was like something I felt very deeply inside my body.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because when I jumped without any idea of what I was going to do, within a week of being unemployed, I got a 2-month contract with a nonprofit organization doing something that I was passionate about, but not wanting to do for work. But I was like very involved with overseas work. So like all of a sudden I had this 2-month contract and I was like, this is beautiful because this is 2 months where I get to do something that brings me joy. And then I'll figure out my next step. And then within that 2 months, I ended up like getting all these teaching gigs for yoga, including one that carved the path, which was somebody was like, hey, you're doing acupuncture here for your fertility. Will you teach us fertility yoga? Like, will you actually do fertility yoga classes here? And then I ended up taking up over all of their programs, from mom and babies yoga to pregnancy to fertility yoga. And then that just spurred my interest in wanting to know more about the woman's body, because now I'm getting paid to do it. So now I really need to understand it. So then that's when I was like, okay, I'm going back to school as a yoga therapist. And then before I knew it, like everything stemmed from that moment, right? So I didn't jump going, I'm going to do this. I jumped and a door opened and I was like, everything in my body lit up, like you said. And I was just like, I got to know more. And not because I have to, but because I want to, right? Like this is exciting. So
it's in the jumping, right? It's in the taking a risk, because it is a risk, no matter how calculated it may or may not be. Either way, you're saying, okay, I'm taking like a huge leap of faith that something's just kind of going to land for me. And you know what, like writing is not like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and then write and get paid for it. You know, like, how do you get paid for writing? You know, a lot of people struggle with that. And it has a lot to do with finding your path, finding your niche, finding what works for you, like creating something that you get paid for. Like, you know, yes, I've written books and I've gotten paid for articles on certain websites and things like that. But really, like, I also mentor people. I created my own women's group, which, you know, I think I would have wanted that. That's what helped me create it. I was like, oh God, like I wanted a women's writing group when I was growing up. You know, I wanted that, you know, writing prompts and other women to connect with who are writers and poets. And, you know, for me, I was like, why don't I give that to people? If that's what I wanted, why don't I create it? It's not something we really have here in the city. So let's create it myself. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it isn't about like, I have this lined up. Like sometimes it's like, I would love for it to look like this. So how do I make it work like this? Or in your case, it sort of just like landed on your lap. It was like, this is what you're supposed to do. But somebody showed you the door and you're the one that walked through it.
Yeah. And I think this is what I love about a lot of the feminine teachings out there. And so when I talk about feminine teachings, I'm meaning like a lot around mythology or goddess work, or like I'm part of a priestess school, which is like the 13 moon mystery. And what I love about it is not so much that they give you this concrete textbook, this is the way, like it's not information based, it's felt based. But one of the beautiful things about these archetypes that they bring us through is teaching us about the different levels that exist within our body, right? These different energies. And it's interesting, the dark moon or the new moon, which we're actually coming up to tomorrow, is the great mother. And the great mother is like, can I just completely surrender and know that I will be trusted, trust that I'll be held and that I'll be supported? Can I just trust and surrender? Which so many different levels that plays into like our menstrual cycle. Can I trust and surrender that everything will get accomplished throughout the rest of the month if I take time to nurture myself? Mm-hmm. Will I trust and surrender that if I jump for this job, that what is meant to be will come my way? It doesn't mean it comes easily. Sometimes I have to work for it, but I'll be inspired. And I think this is sometimes where a lot of what we've been taught after puberty, it's really interesting that this just came to me, that these teachings come after puberty, really put us in a box. And yeah, like it's like all of a sudden it's like when you're a little kid, you can dream whatever you want to dream. You can be what do you want to be when you grow up? It doesn't matter. You can be that. And then it's like puberty hits and it's like, so what are you going to university for? And can that actually translate into a job? And then all of a sudden we have these boundaries and this rigidness. And it's really interesting because this whole conversation now is making me think of a song that I heard just the other day called Daydream. I don't know if you've heard it. By Lily Miola, and I might be saying her name wrong, but I'll put the link for the song in the show notes below. But I'll read her first lyric, which just completely blows my, like, this is exactly what we're talking about. When we were kids in the backyard playing astronauts and rock stars, no one told us to stop it, called us unrealistic. Then suddenly we were 18, going to college for your plan B. Mm-hmm. I'm going to cry. I don't know why I'm going to cry. What you want is too risky. Live for weekends and whiskey. Like, how true is that about our life, right? And like, I'm jumping all over the place here, but talking about how important words are, like just reading a lyric, it brought me to tears because there's this remembrance that came out of my body. So when we talk about the importance of poetry is songs. Mm-hmm. We want to talk about creating uncomfortableness and movement. We need words, we need poetry, we need music, we need visuals.
The thing is those things make people uncomfortable, right? Like we're back to pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits of what other people's limitations are. You know, so my husband is from the Southern United States, and it's a state where, like culturally, like women stay at home or are the, you know, the person who like makes the meals and does the caretaking, which is totally fine. But I think nowadays it's almost like, why can't we have kids and also pursue our dreams, and that's like a big thing to push back against as well. It's like his family's like, what is she doing?
Yeah.
What is this? Like poetry? Okay, that's weird. But at the same time, like we need these things. We need poetry. We need a voice especially for women. I was thinking back to I think you had said this in your womb healing when you were teaching about the cycles. It was like, we're taught as women that periods are dirty, that we have a very shameful, biological, natural thing that happens for us and to us. It's for us, really. It's a miracle what our bodies are able to do and it's part of that. But, in the society that we've created or men have created, it's very much about, well, that's dirty. We don't talk about that. It's shameful. And yet you're still taught and told you need to show up the exact same way that men do. It doesn't matter what's going on in your body. Like, you show up and you do this, even if our bodies are like, no, you need to take a break. Like, no, you need to relax. A lot of womb energy is like listening to that intuition saying like, not today, not today, maybe tomorrow, maybe another day, but not today. And I think, as girls, it's like, I played a lot of sports growing up. It's like, you just push through it. You throw a tampon in and you get out there. Like, you don't, and women or girls who do say, you know what, I'm not feeling good, I have cramps, are like, that's an excuse, right? So we're not taken seriously, even though we're the ones, our bodies are the ones, like you said, that go through the 28-day cycle. Men is just 24 hours, and that's great for them. Like, we also need men. I'm not a man hater. I think men are such an important role in this world too, right? But I think women are held to such different standards. And being a creative person, it was like, okay, I need to have my life look like this instead of just creating what I want and diving into that. It has to look like this. And it really doesn't. Like, that's the most beautiful thing about being a woman is we are creation. Our bodies are creation. Even if you don't end up having kids, that's just totally fine. But your body is just made to create. And so are our spirits.
I totally agree. And I would like to just say, I really want to change, like, words have power. And I really want to change the term stay-at-home mom, because there is no mom that just stays at home and mothers. Like, let's be serious. We have 5,000 different jobs a day. So I actually, during the pandemic, that was one of the things that I set as a boundary with my husband. I'm like, you're no longer allowed to say that I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a work-at-home mom. And whether or not it's working towards my business, or whether it is me paying our bills and doing the finances, or whether it is me cleaning this house, doing the grocery shopping, those are all jobs that I'm doing on a regular basis. So I work at home.
Absolutely. It's the hardest job you'll ever have in the world. It is the hardest job. And there's no like off button. There's no like, I want a sick day. It doesn't work like that. And so I think it's so important, like stay at home, however you want to phrase it. It's important. Like, your life would not work otherwise. Your life would just crumble, right? So where's the balance between like, that's the thing about being a poet is like, okay, I need to live a little bit more grounded and not so like up in the air in my dream state, to be like, because I am a very big dreamer, but at the same time, like, I'm also a 36-year-old mom and wife and friend and sister and aunt. And I have all these different roles in my life. Plus, like, we need to eat, like, we need to eat nutritious meals, and we need to exercise our bodies, and we need to feed our souls, and then we need to have relax time. So like, there is a pressure to show up, as all these different things, like 100% amazing all the time. And it's just not possible. Something, if you're paying attention to one thing more, the other thing may fall a little bit. And that's okay. Like, everyone says like balance, but balance can look different every day. Balance can look like just surviving sometimes, just getting through the day. And that's okay.
So my next question for you then
is how do you feel doing the work on your womb? How do you feel like having this shift in awareness and going, my womb space is important and I want to transform how I'm living in my life, in my body? How do you think that played into your jump in career? If it played,
you know what?
Jump.
It did. Kate, I was really resistant to it at first. Like it wasn't something that came naturally that I was like, oh, let's like sit in my womb space. You know, I took my yoga teacher training, which really helped me understand the chakras, understand, my womb space a lot better, but I still couldn't connect with it. And I couldn't figure out why, and I think my miscarriage was really the catalyst to push me to heal a lot that was there that I didn't realize. A lot of belief and even the way I carried myself, shame, all these things kind of live in there. And I wasn't being authentic to my gift. I wasn't being authentic to myself. I wasn't being authentic to my dreams. And healing that part of me, regardless if I got pregnant again or not, it was like, I even went through a whole like, okay, if I don't get pregnant, if I don't have a baby, I'm going to be okay. And that came from deep within my womb space of like, you are okay. You have other gifts to give this world if you can't get to this point. So, yes, it had to do with fertility. Yes, it had to do with being, wanting to be a mom, but it also had to do with like getting the toxic shit out of my life and being creative in every single aspect. That meant like no hiding. That meant like facing my shit in the mirror, and that's the hardest part is like looking at yourself and being like, oh, that's not a great quality, or, oh, okay, that could use improvement, or, oh, girl, that's amazing. Good for you. I think when we are women and we come from our womb space, it has a lot to do with deprogramming. And I became more feminine in that way. Like I was always very masculine in how I face the world. I was like wanting to, even in relationships, I was wanting to challenge and wanting to constantly pick because I was like, this is how I establish my power, but I became more soft and I realized that I can attract like relationships where I don't feel the need that I have to have these, sorts of power struggles. So it changed everything for me. It changed every aspect of my life, from family relationships to friends. I'm like, friends are very important to me, but also the right type of friendship, and calling in a man that I felt was my match in a way that's like, he has both qualities. Has both feminine and masculine energy and is not afraid of growth. That was fairly important to me. So, asking the question of like, how did that help? Like it changed my world. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for a lot of women to do that work because we're not taught from birth that that's okay. We're not taught it from birth, like about our cycles or about womb energy or any of that womb clearings. Like that's where it all hides. And that's why we need this work because it's vital to our mental, spiritual, and physical health.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my final question for you, because I'm really interested in hearing your perspective on this, because I'm a true believer that things don't just happen by accident in life sometimes. I really, truly believe there was a reason why I was gifted 2 girls and then a boy. And I think there's a reason why you are gifted a boy. How do you think healing your relationship to your body, to your womb space, living your purpose as a poet in a society that maybe doesn't support that idea, how do you think that is making you the right mom for this little boy?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I really wanted a girl. Like when I found out I was pregnant, I had it in my head, oh, I'm going to have a girl. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be a mini me, like you just go through all the stuff. And then when I found out I was having a boy, there was a little bit of like, oh, Like, okay, that's weird. I didn't picture myself as a boy mom, as they call them. I didn't picture myself with a male. But like, now that I've had him, I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I was supposed to have. He was exactly I was supposed to have, and he chose me as his mom because I can show him different ways in the world. Like this is the important work going forward. And I'm sure as having both, the importance of teaching them being tolerant to others, being acceptable for others, having a man who I can teach and mold as he grows. I mean, of course, he's his own person, but about women, and to say like, okay, this is how that would make a woman feel, or this is about their cycles, or it's not dirty, or this is how we treat women, and this is how we respect women. And I don't think there's a lot of that in the world. And I think it's really important that if we're trailblazers and we're people who do our work, we can then pass that on. I guess women, like female or male or trans or, non-binary, whatever they decide to be when they grow up, which I'm very supportive of. At that point, it's like, just be a good human, like it's my job to make sure he's a good human. And that means giving him the right tool set and showing him that, men and women are equal. You can be a creative. You can be an astronaut. You can't the whole thing about being that, but also living that truth when you're in high school and when you're in college and when you go out into the world, and then calling in a partner and whose sacred work will, you'll both connect and do sacred, beautiful work together for the earth. I think giving them that tool set is the most important thing.
Yeah. And that equal can look different. As women being equal to men, it doesn't mean that we have to fit within the man system or the male, the patriarchal system. Let's call it the patriarchal, because it's not about male. It's about the patriarchal system, right?
True.
So it's like, we don't have to operate a way that doesn't actually benefit us. And that still makes us an equal. It may look different, but it's still the same. 2 shades of blue is still blue, right?
Absolutely. 100%. It's funny. Like I don't really have any like masculine toys for him. I have a lot. It's a lot of like same. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot of co-ed kind of. He's got like pink blankets and things like that. And I think it's important to like show him that like, okay, just because you're a boy doesn't mean you have to fit in this square and only wear light blue, dark blue, and grays. Like I don't want him to grow up in a world of light blue, dark blue, and grays. I want him to grow up with all the colors and be like, you pick. The world is your oyster. And as long as you respect people and care for people and, nurture people, you're going to have a really beautiful life. So that's my job. And I think that's why I was called to have a boy, because that's part of my learning experience too, right? Is like, okay, I don't know how to navigate this world. So he's my greatest teacher as well. He's only 6 months old and I've already been like, wow, educated. He's educating me every day. As a mom, I know this, this world. So, I think we chose each other for those specific reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, I really would love it if you would read us a poem or two from your books that you birthed out into the world during the last 3 years. My gosh.
I'm actually working on my 3rd book right now. So hopefully that will come out in the summer.
Oh, yeah, I'm so excited.
I'm shooting for a summer launch. Okay, so these poems are both from Women Born in Fire, Burning with Grace, and Other Lessons. Never let someone pick off all your petals in a game of they love me not. For even if they love you not, even if you're not growing in direct sunlight or boastfully displayed within a teal vase on someone's window pane, you are still sprouting out. You are still sprouting from in between the cracks. You are blossoming, you are blooming, you are beautiful. And that's all that matters.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That's page 107. And that one was about self-love, and seeing your value, even if somebody else doesn't. And I thought that was a really important one to share today, because I think a lot of people, codependence, as I said, I struggled with that my whole life. We need to be told that it's okay, even if someone doesn't see who you are, what you are. You're just valuable because you exist. You know, you're valuable because you're here and you're human. So, okay. So my second poem, you must be willing to not be liked. You have to know you will be talked about, gossiped about, criticized. You have to just keep going anyways. Jump.
Wow. Like that wasn't all about our conversation today.
That one's also from Women Born of Fire, page 137. And like, I truly believe that people will talk, you know, you can't control that. Unfortunately, people can be quite nasty, or people can be very, very supportive, but in either role, you just have to have an unwavering belief in yourself. That's the most important thing. And that's what's really going to push you along to live authentically and live the life you want to live. You know, you hear that all the time. I want to live authentically. Well, you have to start with like, just doing it. You know, there's no other real way, and just jumping in. So,
yeah. All right. So if anyone is looking for these poetry books or how to contact her, all of the information for Rebecca is going to be in the show notes, where you can check out her website, purchase the books, or follow her on social media, which I highly recommend looking at her social media. And to be honest, I've only looked at the Rebecca that I've known since we've met. I haven't looked beyond that. And I'd be really curious to see images of what you look like then versus now, because now you just scream woman of confidence. Like you just scream, this is me, and I am shining bright, right? Like you really do. And I love your recent photos. Like they're just amazing. So I definitely recommend checking them out and checking out her work. I always like to end these calls with a little tidbit for our listeners to take away. So I always call it this week's tip to living a womb-led life. Do you have a little tip that you would like to share with how we can deepen into what it is that makes us us?
Sure. I would say my womb-led tip would be get vulnerable. I think that's the best thing anybody could ever do. Being vulnerable is a strength, not a weakness. And so getting vulnerable with yourself and getting vulnerable with people that you love and getting vulnerable with your hopes and dreams, that's really like the meat and potatoes of being able to live the way you want to live. And I think that does start from, you know, you said like your womb is like you're connected to your heart. Like those are the spaces where we need to start. So that is my womb-led tip, get vulnerable.
I love it. And there was something that came up for me when I was listening to you talk right in the beginning of the conversation. It kind of grew that I would just like to add in as a second womb-led tip for anybody that wants to take on a second one is I would like to challenge everyone here to tell one person in your life who you authentically are. Go to somebody who you feel safe with and say, if I'm being truly honest, this is who I am and who I want to shine to be.
What a great challenge.
Oh my God.
I think like that's vulnerability right there at its finest, right?
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. And yes, check out Rebecca's website. Your website is burnforwords.org. And you can also find her on Instagram and Facebook under Burn for Words as well. But I'll have that all in the show notes for anyone that wants to click there and learn more all about Rebecca and her work. So thank you once again. This was such a great conversation. I could have talked to you forever.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate, so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed myself. So thanks.
Are you excited about aligning to your cycle? If so, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and like the episode if it really resonated with you. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.